Jesus gives a hydration check. And he wants to know what source you're drawing from. And here's the truth. We can learn to hydrate our bodies and still live with a dehydrated soul. You can be drinking water all day and still be spiritually dry. In the same sense, you can be surrounded by religious activity. You can attend church. You can learn spiritual language. You can understand church culture. You can name all the greatest worship hits that are out right now. You can even memorize Bible verses and celebrate sermons, but still not drink deeply from the life of Christ that he offers. So here's the question of the day today in your notes. Here it is. Are you trying to draw water from an empty well? Are you trying to draw water from an empty well? And that's the question that John chapter 7 puts before us today. Are you expecting something to sustain you that does not actually have the capacity to give you life? Are you looking to success, to approval, to control, to comfort, to money, to achievement, to your image, to your relationships, to your status, maybe even to your religious activity? Or maybe even to yourself, to do only what God can do? Are you looking to those things as the source? And here's the truth. Every human is drawing from a well somewhere. Every human is drawing from a well somewhere. Everyone has a well. They have a source that they return to when they're dry, when they're empty, when they feel exhausted or anxious or afraid or exhausted or insecure or restless or any other thing that's discomforting. For some, our well is achievement. I will just tell you that for years of my life, my well, I knew Jesus, but my well became achievement, and I didn't even realize it. But so much of my mood, my attitude, my direction in life was based on achievement. Achievement alone is not a bad thing, but I told myself if I could just accomplish a little bit more, then I'll be worthy. I'll feel better about myself. For some, our well is approval, and this is a nasty well. This is dirty. Because if you seek human approval, you will be put down. You will be put to shame at some point in your life. It may go well for a while, but the same humans that approve you will be the ones that could reject you. Ask Jesus. That was his story. The same people that shouted to crown him king were later saying, crucify him. And if you've ever been tried in the court of public opinion, you know how fickle their opinion is. Hello? For some, our well is distraction. We don't know how to deal with the dryness in our soul, so we turn to cheap substitutes. We just keep scrolling or streaming, or shopping, or working, or drinking, numbing, eating, staying busy, whatever it takes to silence that voice and to quell that hunger and that thirst, if even only for a moment. The problem is not that we thirst. We can be near spiritual things, but not actually and honestly come to Jesus. And the problem is, it's not that we thirst. In fact, thirst is human. The problem is when our thirst turns us to empty wells. And today, Jesus stands in the middle of our story in John chapter 7, and we're going to unpack it. He's at a religious festival known as the Feast of Tabernacles. He was surrounded by temple worship, religious history, memory of God's people walking through the wilderness and receiving water from the rock. The Feast of Tabernacles was celebrated annually, not just as a reminder of the past, but a picture of the future where God would really redeem and set free and restore his people. This was their hope. And Jesus stands in the middle of that festival while everyone's thinking about their past and also thinking about their future. And Jesus says in the middle of that, in the middle of those two worlds that they stand between, he says, let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Not come to a system, not return to ritual, not perform religiously, Not come to yourself as the source, but come to me. So here's the bottom line for today. And it's a little unique compared to the bottom lines we do in other weeks, but this one felt strong to me. And it's this: when the self becomes the source, the self also becomes the center. When the source is the self, yourself, then you will also become the center. And this is problematic. And let's see why. I think it's one of the greatest lies of our age, though, that the self is the source. This is the message of our culture. And you may not be picking up on it, but let me help you see it. We are constantly told to look within for strength. Are we not? We are told to trust ourselves, to trust our gut. We're told to follow our hearts. And yet Proverbs says that the heart is deceitfully wicked. Who can know it? We are told to find your truth, subjective truth. Define yourself. Manifest your future and what you want. Become your own source. How's that working out for us, by the way? You think it's improving the human condition? The message that our culture is sending to people? I'm not talking bad about self-help, but self-help alone will not solve our problems. It can make you a better employee, can make you a more on-time or punctual employee, a more productive employee. Those things are wonderful. Learn all that. I'm not saying that. But the source, when it becomes the self, then the self will become the center of our lives, and we become a self-centered people. And when the self becomes the center, have you noticed that everything in life starts to curve back to me? So it's not just the fact that I got cut off in traffic, it's how dare they do that to me, right? The self is the center. It's my inconvenience. What do I need? What do I want? Everything becomes about my truth, my fulfillment, my comfort, my image, my feelings, my plans, my hopes, my dreams, my platform, my preferences, my control, my happiness, my church. Whose church is it? Thank you. And I understand what we say when we mean by, or understand what we mean when we say my church, but be careful that we don't turn all of our feelings, all of our self-wants, we don't let them curve inward to where every experience has to be about me and my needs. At first, that message in our culture sounds like freedom. Let yourself be the source. But here's the thing, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, the self is not a good source because you will get exhausted. So you need something, I need something that's inexhaustible, outside of myself to help me. Watch this, don't get lost. It sounds like freedom, but it becomes exhausting because you and I were never designed to be the source of life. We were never designed to be our own source. We were created to receive life from God. God breathed breath into man's nostrils. So we received life from God. And self cannot be the source of life because the soul needs something outside itself. That's what we're going to see. So here's the context of John chapter 7. It opens up with a lot of tension. Jesus is in Galilee because the religious leaders in Judea are gathering there for the religious festival, but they want to kill Jesus. Opposition to Jesus is growing. Why? Because he's saying some things that are not palatable. And he's borderline blaspheming, according to them. So the temperature and the tension is rising, and you can feel it. And his brothers, Jesus' own brothers, imagine being Jesus' brother. Man, it's like, can you imagine the stuff his parents said to him? It's like, why can't you be more like your brother? But I wonder if they heard that. But his own brothers come to him and they say to him, If you want to be known publicly, Jesus, then go to Judea. They literally tell him, it's like reading our current culture and like what they tell people. Like, hey, anyone who wants to be known publicly will show themselves. They won't do their works in private. Go build your platform, Jesus. Go build your platform. Put yourself out there. Show yourself to others. But you know why they said that? They said it because they didn't believe in him. Tells us why they said it. They didn't say it because they were wanting other people to know Jesus. They were saying it because they didn't believe in him. It sounded like encouragement, but John tells us very clearly in verse 5, even his own brothers did not believe in him. So their words are not coming from faith. They're coming from unbelief. They're saying if you really are who you say that you are, go build a platform, go public, go viral, and then the crowds will come and they'll affirm you. And you need that affirmation, Jesus. Because if you're going to be somebody important, this is your moment. But man, I love what Jesus says. Here's what he says. And you say, what does this have to do with thirst? I'm going to show you. Jesus says, my time is not yet here for you. For you, any time will do. Any time will do. This tells us something very important about Jesus. Jesus is not driven by public pressure to perform. He's not driven by a platform that he's trying to build. He's not driven by expectations of people around him. See, this is why we need Jesus in our culture, because that definition defines the people that we esteem as great in our culture right now. But Jesus is unlike them. He's not trying to prove himself. He doesn't have to prove himself to anyone. He's not on demand to our needs. Jesus moves according to the will and the timing of the Father. You know why? Because he says, my life is dependent on him. He eventually goes to the feast, but quietly. I love this. He's like, you guys go ahead. And then when they leave, he sneaks off to the feast. And when he gets there, everyone's talking about him. And some say he's a good man. Others say, no, he deceives the people. And the leaders are suspicious. The crowds are divided. His brothers don't believe. The religious establishment wants him dead. And yet, in the middle of all of this confusion, Jesus goes up into the temple courts and he begins to teach. And that's where we enter the first movement of this sermon. Here's the first point. Life is dependent on a source outside itself. Jesus shows us that life is dependent on a source outside itself. John 7:14-18. If you have your Bibles, you can turn there with me. The words will be on the screen. Not until halfway through the festival did Jesus go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. The Jews there were amazed and asked, how does this man get such learning without having been taught? And Jesus answered, my teaching is not my own. My teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. Anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. Whoever speaks on their own does not do so to gain personal glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. So notice again, what are the people asking? How did this man become so learned, having never been taught in our schools? They're amazed, but they're suspicious. And they begin to reevaluate Jesus through human credentials. Where did he study? Who trained him? Who authorized him? What school did he come from? Which rabbis have endorsed him? What institution validated him? And Jesus responds by saying, my teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. That statement is so important because Jesus is modeling that life is dependent on a source outside itself. From the moment you were born and that I was born, we needed someone to help us. We wouldn't have made it. Am I right? We would not have made it had we just been left on our own. From the moment we're conceived, we receive life from someone else. So life is not dependent on us. It's dependent on something outside of us. Jesus responds by saying, my teaching's not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. He's not saying he lacks authority. He's saying that his authority is not self-generated. And neither are our lives. They're not self-generated. They come from another source. Jesus says in verse 18, whoever speaks of their own does so to gain personal glory. And that line is the root of our bottom line for today. When the self becomes the source, the self also becomes the center. Jesus says when someone speaks on their own, when someone operates out of themselves as the source, the result is personal glory. Are you following me? But Jesus says that he is not living from self-direction. He's living from the Father. So even Jesus in his earthly ministry demonstrates a life of perfect dependence on the Father as the source. So why would we think that our souls can flourish living independently from God?